All right, well, the first ever behind-the-scenes look at President Biden's first 2 years in office drops in less than 1 week, just as the race for the White House is heating up.
All right, the tell-all book includes insider reports on everything from the administration's botched Afghanistan withdrawal to the president's public gaffes.
Lucas Tomlinson joins us live from Washington with a preview of this blockbuster. Hey, Lucas.
Good morning, Steve, Rachel, and Brian. 2 years ago, the last American soldier left Afghanistan, Major General Chris Donahue, the commanding general of the 82nd Airborne Division. Months later, Putin launched his full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and President Biden later went off script in Poland, calling for regime change in Russia.
We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principles, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
And here's what happened next, according to an excerpt from Franklin Foer's new book about Biden's first term in the White House titled The Last Politician. Biden instantly knew that the White House would have to clarify his mistake. By the time Biden piled into his motorcade, his aides had released a statement walking back his sentence. Rather than owning his failure, he fumed to his friends about how he was treated like a toddler. Was John Kennedy ever babied like that? Perhaps a Marilyn Monroe saying happy birthday, but I digress. Now, here's more from the book. Biden didn't have time to voraciously consume the news, but he was well aware of the coverage, and it infuriated him. So much of the commentary felt overheated to him. He said to an aide, either the press is losing its mind or I am. Now, between Nick Kristof writing in the New York Times today or Green Party candidate Cornel West, many on the left want Biden to do more to address the poor and the downtrodden.
They are dominated by their corporate wing. They're dominated by the militarists when it comes to foreign policy, and that he and AOC and the others are going to be, in a certain sense, window dressing. The Democratic Party is beyond redemption at this point.
On the GOP side, former President Donald Trump says he's open to Vivek Ramaswamy to be his vice president. The 38-year-old biotech entrepreneur says he's not interested, guys. Of course, Trump would have to win the election.
He's got to lose first.
Right.
Thanks, Lucas.
Mr. Trump also says Vivek's got to be less controversial.
Right. Yeah, good. Well, let's bring in somebody who really runs from controversy. He's the host of Piers Morgan Uncensored on Fox Nation. Is this true, how I introduce you? You don't like to do anything controversial.
I love controversy, but the idea of Donald Trump telling people to calm down and don't be controversial is laughable. Get off it, Donald.
Well, what about this new book? It sounds like, the White House treats him like a toddler, the president. He feels tired, which feeds into the public opinion. Well,
that would explain why he falls asleep all the time in public.
But how about just the fact that there are so many people at the White House who are controlling him? We've seen him a million times go out and go to the reporters, hey, I'd love to talk to you, but they'll get mad. Who's running the White House?
Look, the truth is nobody at the White House trusts the boss not to do something ridiculous in public. Right. And that's because every time President Biden appears in public, something happens that's awkward, embarrassing. He either falls over or he stumbles on his words, or in my case, the one that really got me, he said, God save the Queen 9 months after she died. Right. He was at her funeral. You're not going to save a queen who's been dead 9 months. So, look, I find it awkward. I find it embarrassing. I'm a huge fan of the United States, huge fan of America and Americans, and this is the leader of the free world, and the rest of the world's looking on, going, my God, this guy looks like he's really in the early stages of some kind of senile dementia.
You know, it's more than awkward and embarrassing. It's actually dangerous. What he said there could have sparked a third world war. I mean, the entire war with Ukraine, which frankly he could have done something to stop and has had many opportunities to bring about a peace negotiation, which would make us all safer. Russia is a nuclear power, and that mistake had to be walked back because it was dangerous before he even got in the car. That is, I mean, the war and having someone with his mental state, to me, is terrifying.
Well, look, you got also Mitch McConnell. That was pretty scary footage again. Second time we've seen that. Dianne Feinstein is, you got a lot of people at the top of your political pyramid who look like they are not fit for office and fit for the job. President Biden is the most important politician in this country. And, we were talking about this on the 5 yesterday, but I can't stress this enough. It's not about his age. There will be people of his age watching this going, hang on, I don't fall over all the time. I don't, stumble on every word I say.
You had an incident?
Well, I was at the cricket, England cricket. You should all come to cricket, by the way.
I'd love to.
It's better for the soul, I think.
If we have
It's hard. We tried it. You're good at it.
We are good at it. But it was England v Australia at Lord's, the absolute home of cricket. And Sir Mick Jagger walked into the little hospitality area where I was in. And it was just after his birthday. Well, he was dropping my name apparently before. I don't know. So I said, Sir Mick. And he went, who are you? No, he said, Piers. And I said, you are 7 months younger than the President of the United States. And most people would probably take you right now in the White House.
He looks great. It's not a matter of
That's the point,
Asian.
is that not only did he look physically really sharp and really lean, and he was moving with great mobility and doesn't fall over in a 2.5-hour show on stage, but also just mentally talking to him. Mick Jagger's as sharp as a whip.
Don't you feel the same way about Donald Trump? I mean, he's not much younger than Joe Biden. I mean, you say he's controversial. OK, a lot of people don't like him. He is sharp.
Oh, no. He's incredibly quick-witted.
Yeah.
And the thing about Trump is, I always remind people say, oh, look, he looks so unfit. Actually, Trump is very physically fit. He's never had a drink in his life, unlike some people I could mention.
He only weighs 250.
He's never had a drug, right? He's never smoked cigarettes. Right. And he's only, what, 200 pounds or whatever?
215.
It's 215,
yeah, we're all that, Donald. Right. But he is, I think, physically and mentally, you can't. You may disagree with Trump's policies. You can't disagree with the energy levels, which are extraordinary. So you just compare like with like. But there are lots of people. So David Attenborough, the voice of wildlife around the world, is 97 years old. Have you ever seen a footage of him calling a gorilla a lion? Right. He just doesn't do it. Yeah. So it's not about age, and he's 17 years older than Biden.
So, Piers, I hear he's accelerating over the last even 3 weeks. And do you think can you imagine the drama? You got like 6 or 7 people who think they are a better nominee but are afraid to do it. So they're going to be his surrogates. If things happen like these Hunter Biden revelations get too much, or he has one more fall, can you imagine the drama of Democrats having to put together a whole primary season?
The Democrats have got to look at themselves, right? They've got to work out, is this actually a good thing for the country? It's very hard at the moment in these tribal, toxic, partisan times for people to take a position that puts the country before party. But does any Democrat, 69% of Democrats in that recent poll think he's too old? They're Democrats,
most
right?
Independents, too.
Are they really going to say that in 6 years' time, which if Biden was to run again and win, in 6 years' time, he's going to be having his finger on the nuclear button and we're going to feel comfortable about that? I think it's a crazy state of affairs.
A lot of Americans believe that Obama is actually, and his people, Valerie Jarrett, et cetera, are running this government. But let's assume that Joe Biden does have that fall or that moment where, they just can't cover it up anymore. Who do you think would be the next person that the Democrats should put forward?
Well, I was actually...
Not that we should ask a Brit, but we might as well.
But he knows American culture.
I may as well poke my nose into your affairs. I think I always look to people who go into the lion's den of the opposition. So I was very interested when Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, did Sean Hannity. And I watched that interview and I thought that was really interesting and a bold and courageous thing for him to do. When they go into the lion's den, they've got that confidence. You may not agree with any policies that Newsom has, but if you're a Democrat voter and you look at Gavin Newsom against Joe Biden, you've got one who's young, fresh, dynamic, and is prepared to go and debate with the opposition.
Destroy the state, but I don't want to slow you down.
Has Biden ever done Hannity? Has Biden ever come on Fox and Friends? Of course he hasn't. So why
doesn't he do it?
Well, I think if you're Gavin Newsom, you've got to be looking at this saying again, what is the best thing for the country?
Right.
Do you really believe, Gavin Newsom, that Joe Biden is fit to serve another 4 years in office? And if you genuinely are honest with yourself, you know he's not, and therefore the right thing to do is to run yourself.
You know what? Joe Biden has been on Fox and Friends. Toba, do we have that soundbite? Actually,
hey, I'm Joe Biden. You're watching Fox and Friends, and I tell you what, you'll enjoy it.
When was that?
That was 2008.
Yeah, fantastic.
When he was running for vice president.
But that's interesting you say when he's a senator. There's some footage of him doing a speech.
He was running for vice president.
Right. So there's some footage on YouTube of Biden, I think in his 40s, talking about apartheid South Africa. He is powerful. He's a firebrand. He's eloquent. He's articulate. He's a completely different looking and sounding man to the man currently in the White House. And if you want to see cognitive decline and physical decline, look at those two clips. Whereas Mick Jagger, go back to when he was in his 20s, strutting around with the Stones, and look at him now. Apart from an extra couple of wrinkles, which we all have, he's the same guy.
I want to add something else to your list of Joe Biden. Compromised. Just saying.
Yeah. Listen, I don't think there's an American, there's certainly not a Brit, but I don't think there's an American who honestly thinks it would be the right thing for Joe Biden to do another 4 years in office. It's not good for the country. It's not good for the reputation of the United States. It's not good for Joe Biden. I don't look at him, and I've never met Joe Biden, but I spoke to him on the phone actually after his son Beau died, and we had an incredibly powerful conversation. I'd written a column about Beau, who I knew from when I was at CNN, and we had a really moving conversation about it, what it's like for a man to lose 2 children and his wife, obviously. These extraordinary tragedies, and he told this very moving story, which involved Hagar the Horrible cartoon strip, which he had on his office desk when he spoke to me. And he said, you know, my father gave me this when my wife and baby died, and it was Hagar on a choppy ocean. And he's looking up at the gods, and he's saying, why me? Because his boat is floundering. And the gods shout back, well, why not? And it gave him perspective about these tragedies in his life. So on a personal level, I have an enormous empathy with Joe Biden and what he's been through with these double tragedies.
But what he's done is
that doesn't
into every tragedy that's happened.
And that's the problem. And you hear him now talking about his house fires, and I know what it's like to lose everything. He didn't know what it's like to lose everything in a house fire, because that never happened to him. So I feel sad for him that he is now out there and is a liability. And I think the people around him at the White House, they owe it to him.
What about his wife?
As much as anything else.
What responsibility does Jill Biden have in this?
Well, I think she's inherently a decent woman, but she can't be happy that every time her husband goes out in public, there's a whole army of people waiting for him to do something dumb.
Well, they have to do is sit there.
Right, and it's it's just
she should have never let him run. I mean, I'm a former political spouse.
Yes.
I would have never done this to my husband, Sean. You know why? Because I love him too much.
But he's worked his whole life to get to the presidency, and now he's got it. Now what?
But he was showing signs during the 2020 race that any spouse who loves her husband more than she loves being first lady.
Well, he didn't have to go out, of course, on the trail last time because of the pandemic. This time he's going to have to go out.
Maybe not if Donald Trump is his opponent and has to stay in the courtroom.
Well, yes. In fact, you did one of the greatest things I've seen. That legal thing you did on Fox and Friends yesterday, I think, where you went through all the legal stuff that Trump has to face, how time-consuming. I mean, and you made the best point I've seen, which is if he starts getting acquitted on stuff, rocket fuel to the White House. And if he doesn't, martyrdom, maybe that's rocket fuel to the White House. And you made a great point about DeSantis, which is, I've been watching him with what's been going on in the last 24 hours. Exemplary leadership in a disaster. Very good for him, I think, in terms of how the American people perceive him as a leader.
When we booked you, we had no idea you were going to mention Mick Jagger and Hagar the Horrible.
I did.
All right.
You know, the thing about Mick Jagger is he can't get no satisfaction. But when you have me on Fox and Friends, you get satisfaction, don't you, Brian?
I'll see you tonight on Laura's show.
Piers Morgan. I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.